Hi, welcome back to Brimhall Barbell Club. Today I just have a quick review for you, and it's on the Rogue Solo Pulley. If you're planning on not changing the length of the cable, there's already a ton of reviews out there. Curls in the Rack, I put it in the description below, has a great review on the Rogue Solo Pulley, what it's good for, how you move it up and down the rack, and it really basically talks about the cable's too long. And so the review that I'm doing today and what I'm going to talk about is applicable if you're planning on changing the length of the actual cable. So if that's something you're interested in, that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm also going to talk about a do-it-yourself version if you want to skip that, and then where you can cheaply and efficiently find a new cable and the lengths that would be ideal. So let's get into it. So the rack I have the RML3 rack. It's 90 inches, just under 91 inches tall. So the way mine is set up, when Rogue sends the Solo Pulley, they give you a cable that is 72 inches. So 6 feet. That's way too long for the rack I have. So when I utilize it with the rack I have, and I'll show some footage of it, if I'm doing curls from the low pulley, I'm way out. The further out you go, the problem is, number one, I don't have a ton of room because I have a bedroom gym. But the other issue is that there's sway. If I move the pulley up, so Rogue said, and they talked a lot about this being a game changer because you can move this low pulley up and down the rack, which you can. The problem is, as you move it up the rack, the cable gets even longer. So for example, if I didn't switch out the cable and I moved the pulley up to where you'd want to do face pulls, for example, you can't really see behind the camera here, but I would literally be out of the door and almost to my hot tub. I would be doing face pulls from like way too far away. The issue with that, number one, is space. But even if you had the space to do those types of movements really far away from the rack, it increases the sway, and which defeats a lot of the purpose. So there's a couple options. Now I chose, even after watching Curls in the Rack, that review, which is very good, and again, you should watch that, and this review isn't the same as that. I understood that the cable is probably going to be too long. But I wanted to get the low pulley for a couple reasons. The main reason is it's kind of like if you're an Apple person. So I have an iPhone, and because I have an iPhone, when I went to buy a tablet, I wanted to buy an iPad, right? When I went to buy a computer, I went to buy a Mac. When I went to buy a watch, I went to buy an Apple Watch, because I'm already down the Apple road, right? I don't want to switch it up. I feel like I'm already on the Rogue road. So I want Rogue, I want their attachments because they're going to fit better for a Rogue rack. They quality check on a Rogue rack, even though if you've watched my other videos, their quality check process sucks right now. So that's why I wanted to get, I have the slinger, I have the lap pull down seat. The Solo Pulley, the low row, matches the general aesthetic. Right? And to me, that's important. It looks super nice. And so I went ahead and bought it, knowing that the cable was going to be way too long. So what I did, and what I'll talk about in this video, is I do have a do-it-yourself version where you can just forget the low pulley, the Solo Pulley, and you can do a do-it-yourself version that, by the way, you can move up and down the rack. That cost me about $22, and I got everything I needed at Home Depot. I'll put all the materials in the description if you're interested in doing that. It worked really well. The pulley's not quite as nice and not as smooth as the Rogue pulley, so keep that in mind. I'll talk a little bit about that more. The other thing you can do is when you get the Solo Pulley in, you can go to Amazon and buy a cable. And I did that. So I bought a cable from Amazon. The do-it-yourself version, I made about 64 inches. It was still a little bit too long, so I looked for something shorter than that on Amazon, and I found one that was 59 inches long. It was only $12.95. It's a nice cable. It's not quite the same quality as the Rogue cable, but it's $12.95. And really, it's rubber coated, which is good because that's going to help with the smoothness. But it's all the pulley anyway. So I was pretty pleased with that. And with that length, I think that is the ideal length. If you have a rack that's around 91 inches tall, get a length that's about 59 inches. Let's talk about the actual pulley itself before we get into that. So here's the pulley. It's good quality. You can tell it matches, like I said, the general aesthetic of the slinger and the lap pull down seat. Now it's important to note this pulley is the same pulley you would get with the Monster version or the Monster Light. So here's your 1-inch Monster holes and then your 5/8 inch Monster Light holes. Again, it does move up and down the rack, but you can do that with a do-it-yourself version too. It's pretty heavy duty. There's no welds on this. It's just put together with a few screws, and overall it's a nice piece of equipment. So just like Rogue, it's high quality. Let's get into these other cables though. Okay, so let's talk about if you want to do a do-it-yourself cable. So I got all this stuff at Home Depot. I bought a cable. I think this is 1/4 of an inch. You have to have them cut it. You want to make sure when you cut it a little bit longer because you're going to have to crimp the ends so that you have the loop. And you can buy, I think these are Everbelt, but they're just cable clamps. And I use 3 of them per side. It's probably overkill. But I didn't want it to fail. And I think they came in packs of 3, maybe is why I used 3. So anyway, that's one reason. So you'll just get a few of those. The other thing is I bought a pulley. This pulley's pretty cheap. I would have bought a better pulley, but Home Depot didn't have one, and I wanted to have it for that day. So, but the pulley worked fine. I will say that the pulley you get with the Rogue Solo Pulley is much better, but this is still fairly smooth. And then I just went to my garage and I found a screw that would fit through the eyelet of the pulley, and then a nut, and there you go. You really have everything you need to move it up and down the rack. You can just put it in whatever hole you want. You do need a washer. And the reason you need a washer is so it won't come out of each hole. So if I wanted to put it, right here, pretty low on the rack, you just do like so. You drop the screw and then you pick it up. You got to make sure to not forget the washer, because otherwise, see, it just comes right through the hole. So that's why the washer is a little jack hack. You put the washer in. You just hand tighten it. That way you don't have to use a wrench. Just hand tighten it to the end of the thread and it will not come off. Trust me, I've done some low rows with a lot of weight. And that's it. Now, if you'll notice, I put a little red mark here on the top of this end, just to remind myself this is the actual end that I want to hook to the actual slinger cable, and not backwards. So you get it hooked in, you have your other end, you hook up to whatever attachment you want, and then all of a sudden you have a pretty nice low row that, like I said, you can move up and down the rack. So that's pretty nice. I will say you probably want to, if you're going to have a system, whether it's a do-it-yourself cable or not, have some extra carabiners available, because the carabiners, they're really what's going to help you add length to the cable if you need to, and take away length. Moving this will actually do that too, but so that's really 2 ways you can get it dialed in. And then once you get it dialed in, write it down so you don't have to figure it out every time. But that's the do-it-yourself version. Works fine. If you have a do-it-yourself version that's better, let me know. So to adjust the cable, you do have to take out right here this screw and this little stopper that goes in there. You would have to take this one out and also this one out. So you do have to take both of these out to change the cable. What would be great is if Rogue came with a couple different lengths of cable and some really easy way to quickly adjust and put a different length of a cable in this without having to take these screws out. Something like the end of a carabiner where you can push it in but it won't come out. If this was like that, where you could take the cable out and put a new cable in, that would be a game changer. So here's with the original cable it came with. You can see how far back I am. I mean, it's crazy. My bed's in the way. Look at the sway's not too bad, but I'm way far back, and that's with it very low on the rack. Versus when I put the cable that I bought from Amazon on, night and day difference. You can see I have tons of room. It's still very smooth, much better. And then if I want to move it up and down the rack, I can. So here is the difference. So this is the original cable that Rogue came with, pretty good quality. It's a big loop. Here is the little dinky one I bought from Amazon. I don't think it's going to be a problem, but be aware of that. Do I recommend it? It really depends. So if you want to do a do-it-yourself version, this is pretty easy to do. It's under 25 bucks. That is a great way to go. If, like me, you have already invested in the slinger and maybe the lat seat and you care about the general aesthetic of it, you want it to all kind of match, and you're willing to change the actual cable because your rack's about 91 inches, then I would. If you're not willing to go through the trouble of changing the cable, and again, your rack's around 91 inches, some of the Rogue racks go all the way up to 108 inches, so maybe it would fit those, but I'm talking about racks that are about 91 inches, which is a lot of them. If you're not willing to change that cable, I don't think you're going to like it. You're surely not going to have the movement up and down on the rack that Rogue says you can, unless you want to be 20 feet away doing face pulls or whatever movement. So that's my review. I hope you like it. Until next time, adios.